Hello and welcome to this edition of Biology Bites. Now today I'm going to be talking about this lake right here, Pinto Lake, my local lake, and why I consider that thing a trophy lake. I've told a lot of people about this. There's a thing online. People keep going, you gotta do a video on this because I keep telling my friends what you tell me and they say no way, like Clear Lake, the Delta, they're way better. But I'm telling you, this little 72-acre lake has more 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 13-pound bass in it. And there's a reason why this thing is the perfect storm for building a trophy bass lake. First off, if you look at it, you can see all the way around the edges, all the way around the whole edge of the lake. There's like 10 or more feet of water behind all those trees. Up in those trees, sometimes we get these hyacinth light things that float all over. I mean, the lake is just filled with cover. And it's also, on average, 10 feet or less. Largemouth bass actually developed and evolved and love water that's 10 feet or less. Just a lot of the lakes that we put them in don't have much 10 feet or less of water, especially ones with dams and everything. They're really deep. They have a few areas. But this lake itself is, I mean, out here in the middle, deepest in summer, that's like 18 feet. Almost everywhere around these edges of this whole lake, it's like 10 feet or less. So it's the perfect depth to start with. And the other thing about it is stocked with the perfect amount of bait form and the variation. First off, it doesn't have any shad in it, but it does have a huge population of crawdad, huge population of crappie, huge population of bluegill, huge population of bass, and a big population of golden shiners. And I hear there's also some hitch in there, but it's mostly the golden shiners. Now, if you guys don't know about golden shiners, the golden shiners are also in Okeechobee, which is like, you know, pretty much the big bass lake in the US. And years ago in that, Roland Martin used to go and catch 10-pounders on his show in 8 and 9s. And he would go and he would fish golden shiners. He would hook them up on a balloon rig, a balloon is a bobber, and float them and let them go underneath the hyacinth and the mats. And if you've ever seen my shows, especially my lives when I was at Pinto in the fall, when this whole area around here by the launch just gets inundated with all of the golden shiners and the baby crappie. It just goes nuts. I mean, you throw in a live golden shiner and you get a bass within like, I swear, like 5 minutes. And big ones. I mean, little kids are pulling out 5, 6 pounders and 7 pounders and a lot of 3s and 4s. Just everywhere around here in the launch. In the fall, when the golden shiners come in, there's this type of little like sort of brine shrimp thing that comes in there in the fall, I'm pretty sure, and it breeds in there, and that draws them all in the fall as the water's cooling. And like I said, watch some of my shows back in October and November and that of when I'm live at Pinto, and you will see just a shiner fest. Like kids, just every cast, like they put in for, I said, less than 5 minutes. Good fish, good fish. So that has to do with, well, why? I mean, they have so much food, and the spawn is all those things: bluegill, crappie, the crawdads, the bass. Everything has such a successful spawn in this lake. It is just littered. I mean, you could, in the spring, after the spawn by the bass, you could literally walk across this lake on the baby bass. I mean, they're just everywhere, millions and millions of them everywhere. Bass love eating their baby bass. They love eating the baby bluegill. They love eating the baby crappie. So as far as what's in it and the amount of bait and the amount of food they can eat that's in it, that's one thing. I mean, that's one of the factors you need to create a trophy lake. Now the other thing is, well, along with the fact that it's 10 feet or less for the most part, is that it sits only about 4 miles from the ocean. And so it never gets too cold in the winter. I think the coldest I've ever seen it was 47. But usually it stays in the upper 50s in the winter, which isn't that cold for bass. It allows them to grow in the winter. But in the summer, it doesn't get much more than 75. I had my boat on there for like 2 years and I tested the water. I think I only saw it in the 80s once in August. And then a couple days later, it was back down to like 76, 75. And if you look at the studies on bass, the best growth rate for largemouth bass is actually 75 degrees. That seems a temperature where their body just likes to grow. And that, of course, helps the bigger bass get bigger, but it also helps all the fry every year grow faster and get bigger. So maybe by the end of the year, instead of being 6 inches, they might be 8 or 9 inches. But those are the factors that lead this thing up to being a trophy lake. It's the perfect temperature almost all summer long for growth and growth. It's less than 10 feet or around 10 feet on a majority of the whole lake. Only a little deep spot kind of in the middle. And it has a high protein bait for them to keep them just growing and growing and growing. I keep telling people, and I tell them, this little lake for only 72 acres. I mean, it is a better lake, and you can catch bigger bass in it daily than you can probably on an average given day than the Delta or Clear Lake. Two of the best lakes pretty much in the country for bass fishermen and tournaments. Everybody wants to fish Clear Lake or Delta. But this little lake is just... and people go, oh, how can you say that? How can you say that? Clear Lake, the Delta, the giants in there. Well, a friend of mine in here last year caught 5 10-pounders in a year out of Pinto. And this year he's already caught one. He used to fish, back in the 90s, he used to fish Clear Lake, and he was known, he would win a lot of tournaments. And I said, how many 10-pounders have you caught out of Clear Lake? And he said, not that many. He might get one a year or something like that. But he said himself, this lake is amazing. So I just want to come on here. I haven't done one of these biology bites in a while. But yeah, I just want to tell you what makes a perfect storm as far as a trophy lake. And it's just where this thing's positioned. It's not very far from the ocean. It gets hot, like in the 90s, sometimes 100s during the day, but at night the fog comes in, it cools down into the 50s. So it keeps it around that optimal temperature of 75 degrees, which is the best potential for growth rate in largemouth bass. So that's why I just had to come and tell you, because I said I keep getting people going, you got to tell my friends, you got to do a video on this, because I tell them what you say about Pinto being a trophy lake and the amount of fish in there and the size of the fish in there, and they don't believe me. You say it's better than the Clear Lake or the Delta, and for its size and all that, and the amount of fish in it, the amount of big fish in it, I think your odds of catching, a 4-pounder every single day out of here is better than there. You might get a lot of chunky 2s and 3s sometimes out of Clear Lake. I've caught 4-pounders back to back in there. I've caught a 5-pounder, then another 4-pounder. I mean, it's just an amazing lake, and those are all the factors that lead up to it. I think if it had shad in it, it probably wouldn't be as good, because shad are filter feeders. They might undo the balance that the thing has, because it's just, like I said, it's the perfect storm. It has so many reasons why. And if you go around there in a graph in the summer, and you just see how much bait is down there, I've had to the point that it fooled the graph. We're out in one area and the graph said it was 2 feet deep when we're in 8 feet of water. And then we moved over a little and went back to 8 feet. And it was because there was all the crappie fry in there. And they were so thick that the radar bounced off them and thought it was only 2 feet deep instead of 8 feet deep. That's an amazing, amazing amount of bait. So I just, like I said, just wanted to come on here, do this little biology bites for you and tell you why I think this lake is like one of the best trophy lakes we have. It's just, I'll go over them one more time. More of it's less than 10 feet deep, which largemouth prefer. All the shore cover around the whole lake, 10 to 15 feet back in that stuff, thick trees, thick reeds. It's got tons of bluegill, it's got tons of crappie, it's got tons of baby bass in the spawn, it's got tons of crawdads, and it's got the golden shiners. It is just the making of a perfect storm for a trophy lake, and it is. My PB out of there, 9.5, is out of there. And I've caught a 9, 2 8.5s, a 7.10, a 7.5, plenty and plenty of 4, 5, and 6-pounders. I mean, all right, I'm rambling now, but that's why this is a trophy lake, guys. If you're in the area or ever, come to this area in California ever and want to visit a really fun little lake that you might catch 10-pounders in, Pinto Lake, I call it Lake X, but Pinto Lake, that's your lake. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this little biology bites. I hope it helped. I hope you found it interesting. And please join us for our fishing shows, our tips and tricks, our biology bites, this is our blogs, and come join us live. We go live a lot and we have a lot of fun. And I often go live here at this lake. And we've had a 12-pounder and a 7.5 caught during my lives at this lake. That's pretty rare to capture it live. But till next time, guys. And now it's closed.